Hi, I'm Suze Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to have with me two gentlemen. The first is Bob Altman and Boe Marsh, and they are lifelong friends who started a partnership called Community Shellfish, and it's a wholesale and retail dealer in lobster, clams, scallops, crabs, and oysters. And Bob has a background in the entertainment industry, and Boe has a background in financial services. And they got together during the pandemic and formed this partnership. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, thanks.
Nice to be here.
Great to have you. So first, tell us about how did this get started?
Well, we have a working waterfront up in Maine. We land lobsters, we grow oysters, we land scallops. And actually, I've been at it for about 11 years now. And back in the pandemic, Bob and I, old friends, just really thought about what the value that this working waterfront could bring down to the Fairfield County area in terms of a direct connection between the sea and the table. Sea to table is a common phrase, but it's often misstated as that seafood will go through a dealer and then down to the table directly, but not as direct as we do it. We take it right off our own boats and we bring it down to Connecticut on a truck on a weekly basis.
Okay, great. So just to orient our viewers, and I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. So you're based in, how do I say the river?
The Medomak River in
Medomak River in Bremen, Maine.
Correct.
And then Bob is in Bethel, Connecticut at a distribution center. So I just want to orient, like, where are we? So we're talking about the East Coast in the States. Okay.
Right, we're 7 hours from the dock, so we're just south of 84 in Bethel. So that gives us a direct line down from the dock coming down 84.
Fantastic. And I know a lot of your focus is about, educating and bringing the community of Maine and lobstering and helping people understand. You've got a lot of folks working for you that are 4 and maybe, I don't even know, 5 generations. So I know we have a video clip that will give us a feel for that. But is there anything you want to say in teeing that up for us?
Yeah, sure. This clip is about a fisherman who fishes from our dock, Shannon Harvey. His family has been fishing out of our working waterfront for approximately 4 to 5 generations. And I'll just say very quickly, it's really endearing to see Shannon and having known his father and his grandfather, and also seeing all of his young children now begin to get back into lobstering or get into lobstering and start off and get little boats and gear up and everything. So I think this video will give you an idea of how poignant and how in-depth this working waterfront culture is.
So it's really a family affair.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, great. And Bob actually helped produce this video, right?
Yes, he did.
It's part of a series. We did a series of 50 short videos on 50 different fishermen harvesters, as well as 100 video recipes. And the idea is that if we could use video to empower the actual people doing the harvesting, and then present them to the home cook, they would come to understand exactly what it is that they're purchasing, and they would have a real connection directly to the person bringing them their seafood. And so this is one of the videos in that series.
Well, we'll come back to this at the end to remind people, but and you've got a lot of great recipes on there. So if somebody wanted a recipe, where would they find it?
They're all on a website called Merroir.me, ME for Maine. So Merroir, Merrior, is a derivative of a French word from the sea, just like terroir is to wine. We present the case that Merroir is to shellfish and seafood.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. All right. Well, let's show Candy, can you show the video?
I'm Shannon Harvey. I'm a fourth generation lobster fisherman. I've been lobstering basically since I could walk. I've never wanted to do anything else other than go lobstering. My favorite part of it has just got to be the view, how past generations have left it for us to come out and look at. It basically looks the same as they saw it. Right here in Muscongas Bay, the water is clean. We have a lot of islands in the bay, a lot of rock piles. Lobsters like all that stuff. We've done a lot of conservation work, and it's paid off. For this region, lobstering is really important. When people buy our lobsters here in Maine, they think the money's going straight back to the fishermen, but it's really not. A lot of it's going right back in to our local schools, our grocery stores, car dealerships, our trap dealers. It just scatters. It keeps the community going, especially here along the coast. The further down east we get, the more important it is because it's basically the only industry there is left. I am just beginning to try and get an aquaculture lease to try to grow kelp to help supplement my income, because that will be a springtime income when there's not a lot of money made lobster. I hope for the future that the opportunity will still be there for future generations to continue doing what I've done and generations before me have done. I've always been taught conservation. I believe that a lot of the conservation measures that I do and my father and grandfather did have a lot to do with how well we are currently doing in this fishery. We hope that we can pass it on to the next generation to take care of.
That is beautifully, artistically done and very informative. How can you not watch that? I want to go to Maine and I want to hang out with the lobstermen. I mean, and the beautiful view of the water. That was so well done, but also gives you a sense of this man's life and his family's life.
I particularly love the line where he says that he's looking out on a vista that hasn't changed since his ancestors saw the same view. I thought that was really powerful. That speaks a lot to the preservation of the waterfront that Maine has done and why the working waterfront is so valuable. Community Shellfish has 13 acres, and the concept of the working waterfront is very real. It's the only place on the shoreline where the fishermen can bring their bounty in, where they can store their boats and store their gear and refuel and rebait. And so it is the community, it is the central point of the community, and it's where they park their trucks and their families come and everybody gravitates to Community Shellfish as the working waterfront. So it's very vital. There's, I don't know, Boe can speak better to it, but on any given day, there's many as 100 people all working on this 13-acre plot of land.
Yeah, Boe, can you speak to, because this sounds so rich, I mean, in kind of mainstream American culture, I just want to pick up on the thread of being connected to our ancestors, native indigenous cultures seem more connected in that way, and we don't necessarily speak to or honor our ancestors as much. So that's what comes through for me, just this richness and how clean the water still is in this day and age. So Boe, I know that, by the way, you're also the first selectman of Bremen. So you're very ensconced, having relocated up there, I understand 20 years ago, you're very ensconced in the community. So can you speak to the richness of that?
Yeah, it's really a very complex issue, but as the world changes, as different areas, and we've all witnessed this through our lives, as very basic functional areas gentrify. You have a lot of need to really preserve these particular areas. Working waterfront is a phrase that's used up in Maine, and working waterfront is slightly endangered from basically from gentrification, from building new houses, vacation houses, and whatnot. So working waterfront in Maine is very, 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 very precious. And that's one of the things that we do, is to preserve and dynamize. We don't just preserve. I don't even like the word preserve. We're dynamizing and sustaining working waterfront and providing a very, very valuable spot for people, as Bob pointed out, to fish from, to gather, to get married at. It's a village in its own right, and it's so precious. But to be able to have access to the water and create that synapse with the sea and the marketplace is really, really what we do. Interestingly, we only have, we have about 40 lobster boats who fish from our dock. They each have a sternman. There's backup, there's our employees as well. And so we, as Bob said, we have about 100 people working down there every single day, 9 to 10 months out of the year. And also, interestingly enough, is that we only have about 10 family names down there. It's the Harveys, it's the Polands, it's the Johnsons, it's the Carters, and a couple more names. And these are all these families, these extended families that have just been down there forever and ever and ever, doing what they do exactly how they do.
And clearly they care and they take pride in their work. And this
Correct.
is like in their blood. And you used a couple of interesting terms. Dynamizing the waterfront. Is that, I don't think I've ever heard that word, dynamizing. So can you say more about that?
Sure. And it's really an interesting thing. So we all know that the climate is changing, and waters are warming, and that's, creating a little bit of havoc or volatility with the fisheries. So you heard Shannon in the film talk about that he's going to begin to grow kelp. And by dynamizing, that means that we're providing new opportunities for fishermen around the classic wild-caught fisheries. For instance, growing kelp, growing oysters. We have an oyster farm that we grow our own oysters, and we employ about 5 or 6 people doing that. So in other words, it's about creating new opportunities down there on the working waterfront for the people who have been down there for generations. And so bringing the working waterfront into the future with new opportunities. And it's really important.
Yeah. It's interesting because I read, I think it was just last week, how I was doing some research knowing that I was going to interview you two. And I don't know if this is still the case, but they said that like Whole Foods doesn't carry lobster anymore because they said it's sort of problematic. The industry is, unstable. And it sounds like you're doing a lot, not only in terms of trying to keep the industry vital, but even from an environmental perspective, to keep those waters vital. You mentioned synapse, sea to marketplace. Synapse. Can you say more about that?
Sure. And if you don't mind, Suze, just quickly, I'll just touch on this, the Whole Foods, a great company, of course. Yeah. But there is a little bit of sort of confusion about the right whale, and that really the fishery was a victim to the right whale, problem, and everybody's dealing with that. So the fishery is actually very, very, very healthy. Record catches every year, good prices and everything. So that's really a side. But in terms of the synapse means is that to go out and fish, like Shannon was out on his lobster boat. So to fish, he's got to be able to get fuel. He's got to be able to store his boat on a mooring. He's got to be able to store his gear and repair it on the premises. And so that takes a lot of infrastructure. And one thing we provide is, it sounds sort of petty, but it's so important. We provide 2 heisters, 2 cranes. to pull the catch off the boat, to lower the bait in. And so that, the edge of our dock where it meets the ocean is really the synapse, as it is on every working waterfront, whereby goods can come out of the ocean by these incredible people, and then be brought up and transported into the marketplace. And that's what I mean. And that synapse, again, is so important. If you don't have a working waterfront, if you don't have gear and infrastructure to be able to land this beautiful seafood, would be impossible. That's what I meant by that.
So in talking to you today, and also in talking to the two of you even last week, we had another conversation. One thing that's really has struck me is kind of the fabric that's underpinning a lot of how you're operating, is how much you really honor and value your workers. Not only what you're speaking to right now in terms of having the proper machinery and infrastructure, but the whole way that you sort of have cut out the middleman, sea to table or distribution, so that you can give more back to the folks that are actually catching the lobsters and feed that community in a more significant way. So I would call that sort of more, not to get into jargon, but more like conscious leadership or conscious capitalism. What would you say to that?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're really touching on some incredibly important points. So that's the whole model that we've constructed, that we're filling in now, which is working great, by the way, so in a typical traditional distribution chain in seafood, basically what happened is the product was caught, was landed at the working waterfront dock. It went to a distributor in Maine, and then it went on to a distributor in Boston, and then it went on to distributors, wherever the local demand was. And so there's a lot of value added and freshness, for that point, lost along that chain. So what we're trying to do is to shorten that chain and shorten the profit potential, or capture more of that profit potential and distribute it back into the working waterfront to the fishermen and their families. And it's working very, very, very well. And we've seen it on our landings. The amount of money that we can pay our fishermen directly has increased substantially. And it's only going to keep going as the Bethel distribution and sales side keeps on firing on all 12 cylinders. So it's very, very exciting.
Well, let's talk about the Bethel Distribution Center for a minute. So Bob, do you want to take us through that a little bit in terms of, how that fits in with this sort of whole operation?
In very simplistic terms, so once that crane that Boe describes lifts the crate of lobster up and puts it into the back of the truck, instead of having it head down to Portland and then over to Boston, it comes directly down to Bethel. So we are receiving those lobsters that Shannon and the other fishermen have landed later that same afternoon. Typically, the truck gets in from Maine at around 5:30 in the afternoon. We're then taking the lobster immediately out to about 25 fishmongers across Fairfield County. And here in Bethel, we built a large 7,000 gallon lobster tank to hold the lobsters in pristine conditions over the weekend. And so the Bethel operation really is not only truncating the supply chain, but it's also enabling us to lower prices down here. And then through our storytelling techniques and videos and social media, we're able to inform the home cook as to what he or she is getting as far as value added. So Bethel is really just kind of an extension of what Boe was describing in trying to dynamize the waterfront. This is actually the next logical extension of that concept, which is bringing it directly as close as we can to the plate.
Yeah, and how did you pick Bethel in particular?
We looked all over Fairfield County, and Bethel made a lot of sense to us because it was north of southern Fairfield County, which is highly trafficked, and very slow moving. 95 is now basically a parking lot. So we wanted to remain above that fray, close to 84, just direct route access, as I described earlier, to the dock, but have a very nice jumping off point to reach southern Fairfield County. So logistically, it's a beautiful place to be. It's a wonderful community to be a part of. They had the real estate that we needed, meaning both warehouse space as well as retail space. And it just gave us a great central point into all of Fairfield County.
So I have a question for you, Bob. So the term fishmonger, how do you define that?
So to me, a fishmonger is anybody who's standing behind the counter selling seafood to the home cook. And so in our case, it means the actual fish stores, beautiful fish stores like Nordic Fish in Fairfield, or Greenwich Fish in Greenwich, or Mount Kisco Seafood in Mount Kisco. Any number of fishmongers like that. We are also supplying restaurants and chefs. A lot of chefs have gravitated to us directly because they love both the quality and the pricing. So while we service an awful lot of restaurants, our primary targets are these fishmongers. Okay,
so let's talk for a minute about, I watched, a number of your videos, and one of them was showing how your workers disassemble the lobster as an example. So can you talk a little bit about how you're different in the handling of it?
Do you want me to take that one?
Sure.
Is that for me? Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, Sue. So not only is the working waterfront about the fishermen, but it's also about the people who handle the seafood and process the seafood. So so we have a staff of about 12 to 15, depending seasonally, processors in a whole processing operation about a mile away from the shore. And again, the big thing about that is that what sort of sets us apart is that we're landing the fish, the lobsters or the scallops or the clams or whatever it is, about 15 minutes before they come up out of the ocean, about 15 minutes before they go down to the processing room, and they're processed that fresh. And it just makes a major difference. The other thing that we have chosen to do, and it's not a money decision, it's a real societal decision, and that's that we are a completely artisanal, handmade company, and we only process our stuff using human hands and skilled people who have been doing it for years and years and years. And the quality difference in our lobster meat or our shucked clams for frying or our crab meat or our whatever we're doing is just really sets us apart. It's just so good. It's a little bit more expensive to create and to produce, but it's we get paid back every day because of the quality.
So Boe, when you say it was not a money decision, but a societal decision, say more about that.
Well, I'm just saying is that a lot of seafood processing now has gone into sort of a more of a high-tech sort of circumstance, and where machines are used to shuck lobster, and where there's sort of conveyor belts of operations. We're just a bunch of people that we've all known for 20 years who go in and have a technique that we do, and everybody uses their hands and their good sense, and we just create lobster and clams like they did 50, 100 years ago. And that's what we've chosen to do. If that
so interesting, sort of retro, but it also, again, really empowers and honors your workers.
Correct.
And really values the very literally hands-on work that literally and figuratively hands-on work that they do.
Correct. And they, on the other hand, if I might just add in, they, on the other hand, also take huge pride and have huge appreciation for what we all have together as we work hard to keep this traditional industry alive. And we're just doing so well, and everybody is just so enthusiastic, and it's really a wonderful thing.
So
One
on
of
that,
Stuff.
the
Yeah, go
nice
ahead.
things too is just as far as Bethel goes, is as we receive compliments down here from our shoppers, we're able to relay that over to Boe back up in Maine, who can then share that with all the workers up there. And so they're getting direct feedback from the people who are enjoying what it is that they've made. And so that kind of that loop is being fed by in both ways, because the home cooks are really appreciating what it is that we're offering, and then they can return that compliment back to the folks who are doing it.
Yeah, this is so rich and the time has gone by so quickly. We only have 2 minutes, and I'm wondering, just by way of wrap up and closure on this last point, anything else you want to say around your vision for the future and continuing to build this authentic culture of community within your organization with your workers?
Do you want me to take that, Bob, for a minute?
You take a minute, and I'll put.
Okay. I think it's a self-constructing model, and the more we do it, the stronger it gets. The more people appreciate having a story and and an assurance of quality behind every single product that they buy, and we see it strengthening as we get stronger in Maine. Bob gets stronger down here. As Bob gets stronger down here, we get stronger in Maine. So it's really self-sustaining.
And so towards the future, we have now plans to look at expanding both retail and I think our dream has always been to have one large space where we could have an oyster bar and a fishmongery and all this activity in one space where we could continue the storytelling. So we do have hopes of expansion in brick and mortar terms too for Fairfield County.
Okay, well, thank you both for coming on the show. If anyone had any questions on anything that we covered, how might they reach you? And maybe also give out the Miroir website again for recipes. Sure.
So Miroir is, again, it's derivative of the sea, la mer. So it's MERROIR.me for Maine, miroir.me. And if you want to reach out, just contact info@miroir.me, and we'll get back to you, either Boe or myself, directly.
Okay, great. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Really enjoyable. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Suze Shaner with Community Forum. Until next time, thank you for joining us.